Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. This video is going to be my Geekly Wrap-Up for the week of December 30th, 2019 through January 5th, 2020, which officially makes this my first Geekly Wrap-Up of the new year and the new decade. So if you're new to the series, hi, hello, I am Anna. On this channel, I make weekly videos about all of the books that I read and the various board games, etc. that I play during every week. So this week I managed to read 4 books and I played 2 new games. So let's do the books first. The first thing that I read this week was a thriller, which is a genre that I usually don't pick up, but this was a book club book from a book box. And it's called The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell, and it is about this girl that mysteriously inherits a house from a family that she doesn't know that she had, and then as various things transpire as she's trying to get her house inheritance settled up, she learns about some of the dark secrets that the house and the family within contains. And I really didn't care for this book at all. I rated it 2 stars because I found that it was supposed to be a thriller, but it wasn't particularly scary or suspenseful. At least not for me. And I tend to really like those sort of suspenseful, psychological driven type stories. And I think that that's what this was trying to be, but for some reason it just really didn't click with me at all. I also really disliked that the sort of antagonist character was also the only queer character in the book, and basically all of his evilness came out of the fact that he was sexually frustrated because he couldn't have sex with the one boy that he was in love with when he was really young. And as a queer reader, that just kind of sits kind of gross with me because I don't really like to read books where the queerness, the character's queerness, is basically directly analogous to their evilness. And it wasn't delineated in those particular terms, but I definitely got that sense while I was reading it because the character really does have a shift in the way he starts behaving and treating people before and after he has this sort of sexual frustration or whatever. So didn't really like this book. I think I'm gonna unhaul it now after this video is done being filmed. Next, I read a memoir, Over the Top, A Raw Journey to Self-Love by Jonathan Van Ness, who you probably know from the TV show Queer Eye. This book was fun. I didn't end up liking it as much as I thought I would, but I think that's just because Jonathan Van Ness is a great storyteller, but he's not really a great writer. So I feel like this book would have done better if I had listened to it on audio, perhaps, because then maybe it would have been a little bit more like listening to him talk, which is a lot of fun. He's a really engaging sort of speaker and performer in that sense. That's what he does in terms of content creation. But just reading it on the page kind of seemed really weird because there was just a lot of slang and abbreviations and sentences that continued to just run on and on that didn't work well via text. And there's also the fact that he uses pseudonyms for almost everybody in this book that is from his real life. And I get it. It's to protect their privacy and everything. A lot of authors do that when they're writing memoirs, but he uses all of these Russian-inspired names as pseudonyms, which then can be really jarring and take you out of the story because he'll be yeah, I was in a high school in the Midwest and my friend Ludmila, and I'm just wait, what? So that made it kind of confusing to read. Although this book is important because it's important to have more queer people's stories out there, so I ended up kind of having mixed feelings on it, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read a picture book that I found at my public library's new and interesting books on order. It's called Roar Like a Dandelion, and it is written by Ruth Krauss and illustrated by Sergio Ruzzier. And this is kind of an interesting take on the sort of alphabet book genre for kids. So it's an alphabet book about a bunch of little funny looking animals that contains a surprising amount of poetry and whimsy for your typical alphabet book. So I enjoyed that. I gave it 4 out of 5. I think that it would be a good addition to your library if you have little kids, but for me personally, it's not one that I would buy for myself. I just was happy that I saw it. And then the last book that I read this week was my favorite book that I've read so far this year, and it is also one of the books that I recently hauled for the holidays, and that is The Nameless City by Faith Erin Hicks. This is one of the books that my husband Sean got me for Christmas this year, and it is about these two kids. There's a boy named Kai and a girl named Rat, and they both live in this city that has no name. Kai is the son of somebody who is high up in the conquering military that is in charge of running the city, and Rat is basically a street kid that is part of the like underclass of people in this city. Like, they don't really have any political voice or political power. She's an orphan, like her parents have been killed by the invading army. So the two of them form this unlikely friendship, and they have to work together to foil an assassination plot. And I adored this book. I'm so glad that I made myself take my time reading it, and I only let myself read one chapter every night. I've already started the second book in the series. The series about the city, but I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this story goes next. I would recommend this to everyone, especially if you like reading stories about friendship and just really great quality, all ages graphic novels. Okay, and then I played 2 new games this week. The first one I actually played on New Year's Day, and it is a 1-page long RPG called Kobold Endeavor that my friend Tyler GM'd for us. So they got together a group of people, just that we all, know each other from the internet, and we all got together and we played the game over voice chat. And the concept behind the game is that you are playing a bunch of kobolds, which are little sort of like think if you cross like the fearsomeness of a dragon but with the awkward shenanigans of a goblin. That's kind of what a kobold is. Like, it's a tiny little dragon-like creature, but it isn't very powerful. It's kind of silly. The game is very heavily based around the art of comedy and the art of distractions, and basically Tyler, as the GM, their job was to lead us through this story and see how we would all react as little improvisational kobolds. So I played a little white ice kobold named Fizzle, whose distractions that she was good at were booze and music. I used that with varying levels of success throughout the game, and the goal of the game is to collect as much treasure for your dragon overlord by the time you get out. So it is a very fast and loose game in terms of the rules, but that's part of what makes it really shine, because it allows every player to come up with very creative and inventive solutions to the problems that your GM will throw your way. We had a really memorable scene that I enjoyed a lot, where we were trying to sneak into a place where some dwarves lived underneath a mountain, and we accidentally crashed their like bowling alley league, but they were bowling with these giant snowballs because we were on like a mountain that was icy and basically like a fantasy ski lodge. So we all had a really fun time playing that together. I really want to play more new RPGs this year, which I really have my work cut out for me because I have a lot of conventions lined up and because I got so many for Christmas this year, but this was a great first step towards that end. And then the last game that I played this week, I actually played twice, and it's very heavy, so I'm not going to hold it up this entire time. But this game is called On Mars. It is designed by Vital Lacerda, and the artwork is done by Ian O'Toole. They're kind of like a board game design and illustration power duo. They're not a couple, so I don't want to say power couple, but like power duo. And they've put out a bunch of different board games that I've played throughout this past like last 6 months, I think, really has been the time frame for that. So On Mars is basically a game that's exactly like what it sounds. You are playing as a bunch of different groups that are trying to build buildings and explore and colonize the planet Mars. This is definitely the heaviest weight in terms of complexity and time game about like Mars colonization or space colonization that I think I have ever played in my life. It's kind of a worker placement resource management game, but with the classic Vital Lacerda twist being that it isn't just like your workers represent your little actions and then you bring them all back and things like that. There's actually some really interesting strategy that goes into playing it because of the different types of workers that you have, and because of the fact that instead of just progressing across a bunch of identical rounds, the game state alternates between rounds that take place on the actual Mars colony and then rounds that take place on the like space station that's orbiting the planet. And you can only do certain actions when your little like player piece is on a certain side of the board. So for instance, if you are in orbit, you're not allowed to take the actions that let you build buildings on Mars because you're not there. And if you are planet side, you are not allowed to take the action that lets you resupply from the orbiter because you're not there. So there does come in a bunch of like really interesting strategy there. You have your typical workers that will produce goods for you. You have these little robots that are required to build new buildings, but at the same time, when they run over valuable resources and like research technologies, you can't get them anymore. And then you have a Mars rover, which is basically your slow but powerful gathering machine. And it's just really fun to like send the Mars rover out and to hoover up all these cool little trinkets. You can get little crystals and little technology upgrades and things like that. So this game is a lot of fun to play. It is, however, very complex. So if you are new to board games, I'm going to have to recommend that you get yourself a little bit more familiar with them before you play this. However, if you like big crunchy games or you are a pretty experienced board gamer, I would definitely recommend this. It only plays up to 4 people. I can't really imagine playing it at such a high player count because I feel like the game would take forever. For Sean and my first games, it took us half an hour to get through 2 turns, with each of us, taking a turn, and that was just the first game. The second game did go a little faster because we knew what we were doing, but it is such a thinky game that turns take a while as well. So like I said, if you're new to board games, maybe learn to play some other games and get your bearings first before you try and pick up this one. But I really, really loved it. I did manage to actually beat him the second time, which was amazing. I did it all through the power of a Martian casino and then basically built a gym, which kind of acted as a money laundering front for the casino. So I love the Vital Lacerda games because despite the fact that you wouldn't think that there would be any stories to do with them, like you do really come up with some stories of the way that the game plays, and it's interesting, and I am very much looking forward to playing that again. So overall, I think that's a pretty good Geekly wrap-up for the first week of a new year. If you've read any of these books or played these games, do leave a comment down below and we can start talking about what y'all have been up to this first week of 2020, or you can tell me a little bit about something that you have read and enjoyed recently. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of what I do, please do go ahead and give the subscribe button a click, because that's the best way to get notified when I make new videos. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!